Hello me ducks, it's Simon here. Welcome back to the Hermit's Cave. I hope everybody's doing okay. It's Sunday afternoon here at the moment, and I was just having a bit of a relaxing afternoon. I've done some reading, I watched an old black and white movie, and then I fancied playing with some cards. Now, last week I bought a second box. These are gorgeous. They are a little bit expensive. They're beautiful, and it's the second one. As I mentioned, I brought one a couple of months ago and I showed it, and last week I decided to, they're beautiful as well on the inside. Look at that kind of brown velvety interior, really gorgeous. But last week I thought, well, I'm going to get it because I've got a table under the window with a huge 2.5 foot gold Buddha on it, and I've got a candle either side, and then in front I've got these two boxes side by side, and just having one looked a bit odd. I'm all about symmetry. Anyway, let me just have a sup of coffee while I chat. I decided to put in my most used decks. So Tarot, Oracle, there was a Marseille, an RWS, the Moonlight Oracle. I've got a Dowsing Crystal in there, and a few bits and bobs. But because they're my most used decks, I was constantly going to them, and I like to have my most used decks around me on my desk base. So I thought what I would do is, because these boxes are great for protecting valuable items, I thought I would put my oldest and most precious decks into them. And then that got me thinking about, actually, I could do a little bit of a video showing you guys what my oldest decks are and why in particular, you know, they are important to me. I've got 9 decks to show you, and now all of these 9 are somewhere in and around the 50-year-old category. So they're either mid to late 60s or going into the early to mid 70s. So what, 50 years ago was 1973, some could be nearer to 60 years old, but they're around that kind of time frame. With the exception, I wanted to give 2 honourable mentions. The first one is the Morgan Greer. Now, this copy of the Morgan Greer is 30 years old. So this is 1993. And I know people are going to be screaming at the screen now because, yes, I edged mine. But as I said at the time, I wasn't looking at, so this is the 1993 version, wasn't looking ever at letting go of it. So, you know, my deck, and that's an extra card there about Bill Greer. You know, I just, it's personalised to me, and I'm not likely to get rid. Obviously, if this was a much older version, I might reconsider edging a deck, because all of my other decks that are old I haven't touched. I don't know why that is, because, you know, by the same principle of never letting go of it, then I should be able to do really what I want. Maybe I'm thinking of people who will own these decks after I'm not here anymore, and keeping it kind of preserved for them. We all know what the Morgan Greer looks like. This is a gorgeous deck. The cardstock for this one is really lovely. It's got like it almost leaves like a waxy feel on your fingers. Beautiful cardstock. This is an RWS deck that, you know, does a very sort of zoomed in close up of, I mean, look, of the characters within the RWS deck. I love this as a lover's card. It's beautiful. Yeah, so it's a classic, and I just wanted to mention it because this is still readily available. You can get a tin version of it now. but you can hop onto any kind of, whether you go to US Games website or the Devil, or you go to Amazon, you can still get a modern version of this. One of my favourite versions of the Five of Pentacles as well. I absolutely love this with this embrace. So yeah, so I just wanted to mention the Morgan Greer. Although it's not 50 years old, it's an older version. You know, I'd love to get, and there's one with a border, isn't there? But I'd love to get an older vintage copy, but you know, I'm not prepared to pay ridiculous amounts of money. And then I wanted to mention this as well. This is a Fournier Tarot de Marseille, and it's the one with the bright, vivid colours. Now, this is from 1983, so this is now 40 years old. And again, not in the time frame that I'm looking at, but I wanted to mention it. Now, this was a birthday present that was given to me about 5 years ago from a colleague who found it in an old kind of, not a charity shop, but like, what do they call them? Antique shop. Yeah, I'm thinking my words then. And yeah, I mean, again, this is one that you can still get today. The Didi, the size of the cards are really small, but that's usual for Fournier. But this is 40 years old. But I just love the colours of this deck. They're so vibrant. Just really, really beautiful. So yeah, so that's the Tarot of Marseille, and it's a 1983, and the box is really aged, as you can see. So I just wanted to mention them as like two honorary mentions. Most of the decks that I'm going to show you are RWS clones, because that's my bag. That's, you know, the tarot that tarot tradition that I'm most familiar with, the one I kind of love and appreciate the most. There is another RWS, sorry, another Marseille deck that I'm also, well, two, kind of. Two pip decks, let's say that I'm going to mention as well. All right, so let's begin. The first one I'm going to show you, now I will also say, because these are old vintage decks, I have had custom made tins made for them because I wanted to protect them. I do have all of the original boxes though. So the first one to show you is the Royal Fez Moroccan. Now this particular one is from 1975. So we're coming up to 50 years. So 48 years now. And there is something about the cardstock of the early to mid 1970s that is just gorgeous. This has the exact same kind of cardstock and finish as the Blushing Fool RWS deck. The Royal Fez Moroccan has, well, the style of it, is, as you can see, is pen and ink. I'm just going to make sure, I'm wondering whether I should actually, let's bring the camera down a little bit just so you can get a closer look. Okay, hopefully that's better. Yeah, so the Royal Fez Moroccan, it's done in a pen and ink style drawing. There's lots of detail in this, but you see a lot of black and white sketchy work as well, because the concept really behind this deck, it uses numbers as well instead of Roman numerals for the majors, is that, you know, the major elements are coloured in red, blue, yellow or green to highlight so that they stand out. So you'll see that the pips, the minors, the arsenic, they follow the RWS tradition, but there's no numbers on them. You just, you know, if you've got a knowledge of RWS, then you know what they are. Three of Pentacles, for example, Three of Wands. And the majors don't have titles either. They just have the number. So key 2, High Priestess, key 3, Empress, etc. But the illustrations, in this deck is wonderful. I was so fortunate to eventually get a copy of this. I coveted this deck for like the longest time, and yeah, it's just gorgeous. It really jumps out. And this has been kept in, I've been very fortunate actually with the old vintagey type decks. You know, they've all arrived to me in really good condition, and I know that's not always the case, and you do have to use discernment when you're buying, particularly from auction sites like eBay. I just love this Hermit because, you know, they will be a little bit liberal with the truth, but try and see as many images as you can. These have a few little marks, a few little scuffs, but it's nothing major for a deck that's nearly 50 years old. Aren't the illustrations gorgeous? Really, really lovely. So that's the Royal Fez Moroccan. I do have the original box, as I do for all of them. It's very rare. In fact, I don't think it's ever happened really. Maybe once, where even if I put cards into bags, and I tend not to use a lot of bags because I forget what's in them, but like Kelly Bear pouches where they're kind of colour linked to the deck, I find easier. But even if I put them into bags, Kelly Bear pouches, or any other sort of, you know, wooden boxes and things like that, or tins, custom made tins, I don't throw the boxes away. I still keep them. Okay, so the next one is from 1973. So this year, this becomes 50. And this is the Ancient Prophecy. Tarot, the Ancient Prophecy. It has a really big box that comes with this deck. These are the backs. The cardstock for this deck is appalling. But, you know, and you can see by the thinness of the deck. And there's a few kind of 60s, 70s decks that I've got where it's like that. So I think you get kind of like the cheaper decks in terms of what would have been cheaper at the time in terms of affordability, tended to give you a bit like today, you know, if you go into the works. I was looking earlier in the works and there's a set in there. It says £14.99 down to £8, and I could feel the weight of the box that the cards are going to be naff. And these decks that, you know, weren't produced by, I don't know, US Games or AGM, then you probably did get this kind of flimsy cardstock. However, the Ancient Prophecy was sent to me as a gift, and for a deck that's 50 years of age, it's in excellent condition. And there's not a lot of information out there about this deck. It is an RWS clone. What I really love about this is the coloration of this deck. I mean, look at it. The line work is beautiful, but almost like the you know, it's almost like pencil, not pencil crayon. What do they call it? Yeah, pencil crayon. I was thinking that was a definition for wax crayons. It's not. This is off the front cover, and this tin also replicates what's on the front of the box. So we do have our Emperor there. These are all in order. This is a deck that I don't do readings with, but I like to get out every so often and have a look at it. And I think the reason why I'm frightened to use it so much is just because of how thin they are. I don't want it to break or tear. Okay, so perhaps it was just the first few then. Perhaps when I did a walkthrough or something. But look at this. I love this perspective for our Six of Wands. And we've still got the laurel here, you know, and up on the white horse, but this perspective is fantastic. So you can see it's an RWS clone, but it's completely redrawn. It's not Pixie's artwork at all, obviously, because it's lots of different positions and perspectives. I love that. That's very clear, isn't it? A very clear image for our 10 of coins, 10 of pentacles. But yeah, there's something about the sketchiness, the colours. Look at that. Again, completely different perspective for our 4 of swords. I love it. Maybe I should read with this more. Look at this devil. Isn't that an amazing card? Look at his expression. There's our moon card. A very voluptuous little baby on the horse there. Look at the colours used in that. Our 10 of swords. Just gorgeous, really, really gorgeous. So that's Tarot, the Ancient Prophecy. I love how it's aged as well. We've got this real aging happening here, which is, you know, natural aging. It's not been edged or anything like that. So that's the second deck. And then I may as well show you the deck that was my first. So this is the 1970 versions. Now I have 6 versions of this deck. 6? And that's because the first version, it should just be down here, is this one. So that's the one I had in 1987 with the booklet, the pull-out, fold-out, Celtic spread sheet, etc. That, I don't know whatever happened to my original, but that's one that was gifted to me by my friend Sandra. And then I rebought and that was probably about 3 years ago. And I rebought about 6 years ago the RWS, the 1JJ Swiss, which was a 1980s version. And then I got this version, which is the first version, which is in the 2-part box. But then I've also got Conrad Staines' vintage version, which I love. And then I've also got Vincent Petiti's version here, which he's redone, recolored. And he gave you alternatives. Instead of Juno and Jupiter, you could have the Hierophant and the High Priestess, as you can see here. So gorgeous version that is. I love it and I use it a lot. This I wanted to get because I heard about the cardstock. Again, this is a very small deck, whereas that one I've just showed you is full tarot size now, as is Conrad Staines' deck. But yeah, I mean, I just look at these images. So you can see here, instead of our High Priestess, we have Juno, and then we have, have I moved it around? No, Jupiter for our High Priest, or the Pope. And that was done at the time because, you know, not to offend. And that's why this deck is referred to as the 1JJ Swiss, because it was printing number 1, JJ for Juno and Jupiter, and the place of production was Switzerland. And as you can see here, tarot cards, AGM Mueller, who did the before US Games did the 1970 version, and it was just called tarot cards. But these are very vivid. They use the primary colours of blue, green, yellow and red. I love that devil image. That image is so ingrained because, even from a childhood. As I've mentioned so many times, you'll be fed up with me saying it, but this appeared on a TV show called Tales of the Unexpected, and this is quite unique to this deck. And that devil card would spin round, just like the death card as well. Where is the death card here? Again, another iconic image in British culture. The colours are stunning. So, a favourite of mine because sentimental reasons, and we all love our first deck, I'm sure. I would imagine there might be a few people out there that bought a really naff tarot deck to begin with and then found a better one down the line, but this one, I had to get this original. I saw it on eBay. It was a steal. The box is fully intact for a deck that's 53 years old. And it has the most beautiful soft cardstock. I couldn't not get it. Okay, and then that takes us to the hoi polloi. Again, I've got the original box. Do I grab it? I'm sure everybody knows. It's right at the back there. Everybody knows what the tall, long box, the hoi polloi, looks like. I brought a custom tin. This version is 1972, so this is 51 years old now. Made popular again by our very own Brant Palazzo, who did the Moonbaby Tarot, because he took the images, cleaned them up, changed the colours and made a beautiful modern version of this deck. This deck, I mean, I paid over £100 for this because it was just one that I really wanted. It has its place in history. It's known for being quite cheap. It was billed as a kind of a family parlour game. Look at the misprints all the way through it. The border here, thick on this side, thin on the other. It is so gaudy in its colours, but look how 70s it is. I love it. Yeah, so this has its place in history because this is 1972, so you have to kind of picture the scene, really. Let me just look at this. US Games at the time in 1972 was trying to obtain copyright for Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork. And then here is this very small independent company releasing its own version of the RWS. And so once US Games did get the copyright, for the longest time, this was the last commercially produced tarot deck of Pamela Coleman Smith's style drawings, because for the longest time only US Games would produce those decks. I mean, we know now in the last few years how that copyright has ended and people are releasing RWS decks left, right and centre. Again, look at the misalignment. But it has a naive charm that I love. It is what it is, you know, it's of its time. There's something very familiar, particularly around the fonts and things, that kind of remind me of my childhood. You know, when this came out, I was 1, going on becoming 2 at the end of the year. And yeah, this just wouldn't have looked out of place. Well, I was going to say it wouldn't have looked out of place in our sitting room, but it would have done. Tarot in our sitting room when I was a kid would have looked way out of place. More's the pity. Here's the fool. But you get what I mean. I mean, look at the colours. His face and beard is the same colour as his cloak, which is the same colour as his throne and the mountains in the background. It's low production, but I absolutely love it. Really, really love it. That's probably the worst. But anyway, I won't be without it. And I think this was, at the time, I wish I could say the same since, but at the time when I bought this, probably 5 years ago, it was the most I'd ever paid for a tarot deck, but one that I really, really wanted. Okay, so what should we look at next? Let's look at the Albano weight. Again, I had the box, but I had a custom made tin because this is probably the oldest deck in my collection. This is a 1968 copy. You can still get this. US Games are still producing it. So yeah, it's still around today. Again, this doesn't have great cardstock. If you buy it now, it has quite sturdy US Games cardstock, but this is, as I mentioned, 1968. So what we're talking, 55 years old. The Albano 8 is copied exactly from Pix's artwork and then recolored, as you can see here. It's got this very famous within the tarot community back, plain white with this gold sun design on the back. Now, some would say that this is garish, been done quite garishly. It's not an opinion I share. If we think of the 1960s, particularly 1968, you know, the advent of Woodstock and hippie and flower power, then it was bright, vivid colours. I love this death card with the red background. And look at Temperance. Just gorgeous. Yeah, so this was done by Frankie Albano. And I just love it. Now, what this deck did for, I believe, although I know another deck I'm going to show you in a few moments, they kind of said, and there's lots online, I'm not really getting into it, but you know, Frankie Albano kind of stole the idea from them. But this is a deck where the minors are uniformed by colour. So for wands, we have this orangey colour. There is a couple of exceptions in some of the suits, as you'll see. It's different from when we get to the courts, but the ace through to 10, particularly in the wands here, has got this orange, and then we get these blue colours, different shades of blue for our courts. I love this green. I think this is a gorgeous green. It's like a lime green. Obviously, when we're indoors, it's a little bit different. But yeah, as you can see here, even in the outdoor scene there, we've got that lovely lime green. And then it's like a lilac colour for the courts. And then we had this pale lemony colour for the swords, which makes this red heart really pop, doesn't it? Then it goes like a different shade there for the 8. They've used the colour there. I mean, for the 9 and the 10 of swords, you've got to have the dark backgrounds. See here though, we've still got that the sky where it's lighter, you know, the night is darkest before the dawn. It's very representative in the 10 of swords, as in, you know, things may seem all is lost, but there's always a new dawn, a new day. That's in the yellow as well. Where it goes a little bit off is the cups. So we get kind of like this duck egg blue, which is really nice. And then we get to the 5 and it just changes to like this olive green. I mean, it's a gorgeous colour. And I think that's deliberate because of the mood of the card. And then it goes back, as you see, to this duck egg blue again, all the way through. And then we get a more of a darker blue here. So yeah, this is a treasured, I traded for this and I don't regret trade in for it, because the Albano way, if you like this deck, as I say, you can still get it today, but there's just something, the colours aren't as garish in this 1968 version as it is in the new version, and I actually gave my new version away just because I didn't like it as much once I had this, and this I just absolutely treasure. Okay, so deck number 6, let's have a look at, so this one, Tarot Classic. Now this is really well loved, but as I mentioned earlier, I've been really lucky, because when I've bought old decks, the cards, and that's what's most important, is it? Because you can, it doesn't matter the state of the boxes, you expect them to get wear and tear over time, but as long as the cards, because that's what you're working with, are in good order, then and good condition, then yeah, who really minds? So this is Tarot Classic, and this version is from 1971. So this is 52 years old. The box, it has come apart here, still there. Then we've got this little slip case on the inside here. And then you just take the cards out. Now this deck, it's got US game systems here, but this is a Muller, Kaplan, but you can see it says Waddington's as well, which that was, Waddington's is known over here as a toy company. Most of my toys and games when I was a kid was from Waddington's, but they would manufacture. So it's distributed exclusively in the United Kingdom by Waddington's, and that's the playing card company in Leeds. But they went on to make lots of toys and things. But yeah, so it's also got on it, as you can see here at the top, that it's got Muller, Switzerland, but it's also a US Games. So there's that whole collaboration going on. So this deck is really unusual because it's a Marseille style deck. It just calls itself Tarot Classic, but as you can see from the minors, it's in the style of Marseille. But what this does is it's a reproduction of the 18th century woodcuts by Claude Burdell, but it uses RWS titles. So we have a High Priestess. I love the colours as well, and I love the sketchiness of it. I think there's a theme happening here, you know, when it's a little bit sketchy. I just love it. The Hierophant, which, you know, it's really unusual. It's very, very vivid. The colours are wonderful in this deck, really wonderful. And again, this is pre-copyright because it's 1971. We didn't start getting US Games copyrights until mid-70s. Look at the Hangman. Death. I've lost my trail of thought talking about the copyright. But yeah, and you'll see here when we get to the minors as well, we have cups. Well, we should really be having batons, but we have wands. And then we'll have our swords. And then, when it comes to coins, we have pentacles. Not quite sure why I've got my Knight of Wands mixed in there. So do you see, it uses, it's called Tarot Classic. It's a Marseille deck. but it uses RWS titles for like High Priestess, Hierophant, Wands, Pentacles, etc. Yeah, so I love this. I love how battered it is. But you know, I want this deck to be around for another 50 years. So another reason why it's going to go into that box. That doesn't mean I'm not going to use it. You know, if I'm drawn to use it, I'm going to use it because it is a classic, literally. So yeah, Tarot Classic. All right, second to last one then to show you is, no, not second to last one. I've got 3 more. Okay, you know it's coming. My soul deck. This is the Blushing Fool. Now, this one, and I've mentioned it before, but just in case people ask again, just to know the difference, this is the blue box it comes in. Again, of the time, it just says tarot cards. Now, it will say 3 Fitzroy Square, but lots of blue boxes do. But it also has to say in association with Waddington playing cards. Okay, now this says 1971. So the first edition is 1910. So the Pame after the 1909 Roses and Lilies. And then reprinted many times to 1939. So like the other Pams. And then we've got this version. Now, this was before it was copyrighted, so you can see there's no copyright. This is a kimono as well that was sent to me from Japan, which I'm going to talk about a deck next. And I put the little white book in there too. This is just my everything. This is the deck I would grab if the house is on fire. Now that we close up, I might be able to show you. There is no lamination at all on these cards. I don't know if that's showing. It is just the softest, smoothest card. Total plaid backs. There isn't a single blemish on this deck at all. It is in pristine condition. And as I said at the time, it's almost as if it's just sat in a drawer, not being used for 50 years. It's now, so it's got 1971 copyright, but this is the Blushing Fool. So when you look at the little white book, it says 1972. So this is now 51 years old. There's the blush on the Fool. And people say it's just a printing error. I wouldn't necessarily say it's an error. It's just how it was printed. But the line work in this deck, and you can buy, if you go and buy an RWS off the shelf in the shops, it's quite blotchy. This, the detail, even the flowers at the bottom and everything, it's sharp, it's crisp. The colours aren't as garish, even though the yellow, it's a nice lemony yellow. Comes out a little bit brighter on camera. But these cards are like butter together. It's absolutely gorgeous. Favourite tarot deck ever. I love it. I think even if I ever became fortunate enough to own a Pame, I don't think I'd love this one any less. Just wonderful. Look at the blue. Look how beautiful that blue is. I always, because it really jumped out at me, I'm not quite sure where it is now, but my significator card, which is the Page of Cups, the colours within that card, it's going to be right near the end, isn't it? There we are. I mean, just look at that blue. It's just beautiful. Why don't they make decks like this anymore? I mean, why? Anyway, my heart sings every time I hold this deck in my hands, and I keep it in this very special case that was sent to me from Japan. Okay, oh, pop that through there. There we go. So my blushing fool. All right, moving on. The JK Weight. Again, quite a big box that come with this. So I had a custom tin made playing cards. This is by Alexandria Jupiter King and Sigan Nakajima. And it was published by, I'm not sure if I can pronounce that, Tairiku Shobo. I think that's how it's pronounced. Now, I'd seen the JK Weight and I seen that it went for over £1,000 on eBay, which is crazy. I don't exactly know how old this one is. This was sent to me from Japan. I believe it's the second edition. Originally it was 1975. I believe, from what I was told from the sender, that this is 1979, but there was a later printing as well of 1989. But again, it's a clone. It's a redrawing of the RWS cards and recolored. And these have really, again, bright, beautiful colors, lots of reds. Cardstock is thin because, again, it was one of those decks at the time in the 70s that were quite inexpensive, that people would buy for like parlor games, but it's beautiful. I mean, look at her wings, the little blues on the edges. I love this death card. We've got a kind of a more Marseille style, this skeletal figure here riding the horse rather than the hooded and cloaked or robed. But it's, you know, it's the RWS death card that we know, but obviously in the opposite direction. We've got the two towers, the setting sun. Look at the sun. The little baby's grown up and got himself a girlfriend. Love it. The moon, look at the face in the moon. This deck is just beautiful. I love the bright colours in it. I love that perspective. And even though this is produced in Japan, it's got English titles on the majors and the courts. The detailing is exquisite as well. Really beautiful. I mean, look at that. The detail there. I love the little hair. That is a beautiful, beautiful Three of Swords. Look at the rainbow colours. That kind of gives you that sense of, yes, everything's dark and dreary, but you know, there's light somewhere. You're going to get a rainbow when you get light at the same time as water. So there's that hope. I love the red background. Look at the colours on the ground here. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous deck. JK Weight. And JK because it's Jupiter King. And then obviously it's following the same style as, I mean, it could really be called JK Smith, couldn't it? But, you know, Waite's kind of vision of the tarot. Gorgeous fall. Look at the colour of that sky. Just beautiful. Oh. They don't make them like this anymore, is all I'm going to say. All right, let's have a sup of coffee and then we'll look at the last deck. you've probably already guessed what it's going to be. And it's the University Books. Again, I can't really age this deck. I know that it was first published or first printed in 1959. I believe this is one from the early 70s. Very thin cardstock, just like the JK, just like Ancient Prophecy and my Albano Weight. Now, it's in the original box, but interesting fact, the University Books tarot deck invented the little white book. And there's lots of controversy between this printing, which is quite gaudy, I must say, and the Albano Weight, because 1959, it was 7 years before Albano Weight did his deck. And there's been lots of things aimed at US Games. I'm not going to go into that, but they said that they copied the exact typeface with errors and everything else. And if you go online, there's photographic evidence that, you know, what I will say is, you know, the University Books is a beautiful, beautiful version, a clone again of Pixie's artwork that has been recoloured. And they've done their thing with the coloration, and Albano Weight has done his. Frankie Albano's done his. They do have different coloured backgrounds, as I showed you in the minors with the Albano Weight. But if people don't like the gaudy yellow that you get today in the US Games, you probably won't. That's got a misprint, look. And I love these imperfections in the old decks. I never thought I'd get a copy of this. I tried for years, at least 3 or 4 years, trying to get a copy of University Books. And then I was able to get this in a trade. And I was thrilled. I felt like my collection of 60s and 70s vintage decks was complete once I got this. So you can see we've got kind of like grey backgrounds and things here. So it's not that Frankie Albano copied it verbatim. It was recoloured in his way, but they were saying that, well, you know, the idea was taken from this deck and the same typeface and things, but who knew? Who knows? So there you have it. They are my, well, 11 really, because the youngest of the decks that I've shown you is 30 years. The oldest is probably, what, 55 years. But they're my, my vintage decks, my oldest decks, my most treasured decks, a collection that I'm really humbled and, you know, honoured to be the custodian for however long I'm left on the earth. Somebody else will have these cards after me, I'm sure. I hope. Nobody comes along and just disposes everything or drops a match. But yeah, I'm lucky to be the owner of them for the time being. And long may they bring joy to other people in the world as well. I'd be interested in hearing what your oldest decks are. Do join in. I'm not going to hashtag it. I don't want it to be a tag, but you know, people can do VRs without things being a tag. A VR is just that. You know, you see something and think, I'm going to add my voice to that, or I'm going to show my collection. And yeah, but let me know if you do it so that I can jump on your channel and have a look. Or if you don't have a channel, then tag me on Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, but you're on Facebook, drop them into the Hermit's Cave Facebook group. However you want to do it. I'm just watching this candle seep onto my desk, but it's looking quite quite amazing. But anyway, I'm gonna go. It's been lovely to spend the last, I don't know, 45 minutes, hour with you all on this lovely Sunday afternoon. I hope wherever you are, you're having a fantastic weekend, and I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. Thanks for being here, everyone, and until next time, go in peace. Namaste and blessed be.